Welcome to the Thriving Through podcast, where we dive deep into the real experiences of successful self-employed consultants. Are you struggling to build your consulting business or contemplating the leap from corporate security to self-employment? In episode 18 of the Thriving Through podcast, Julie Collison shares her candid journey from special education professional to independent consultant. Julie opens up about her biggest challenges in the first year, including making the difficult decision to leave a steady job for her family's well-being, navigating the uncomfortable transition from nonprofit work to charging for her services, finding the right marketing strategies after wasting money on ineffective advertising, and balancing her passion for helping families with her desire to break into the more lucrative corporate market. You'll hear practical insights on building collaborative relationships, positioning yourself as a go-to expert, and managing the mental challenges of consulting. Julie's honest advice to other consultants: keep fighting. Compare your current unhappiness to your previous unhappiness and decide if you want to pull through and come out the other side. Don't miss this authentic conversation about the realities of building a consulting business from someone who's in the thick of it. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. Today, my guest is Julie Collison. And Julie, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Yeah, I'm Julie Collison. I have a master's in education. I was in special education for a while. It's always been my passion. When I was in high school, I was involved in volunteering in different classrooms for kids who had different needs. And then I babysat for families of kids who had autism, mitochondrial disease, all of those things. Then I went to college for special education and transitioned to work. So working with the older kids on what they're going to do when they graduate. And I worked as an intervention specialist, so a special education teacher for about a year. And then I went on and worked from that experience, I learned a lot about what families need to know about the adult world. So I went and worked for an organization that provided care to, people transitioning out of school and older. So as a supported employment manager, helped people to get jobs and kind of figure out that side of their life after school. And then from that knowledge, I wanted to go back into schools. And I was a transition coordinator for almost 9 years. And so what a transition coordinator does is we work with students ages 14 and up in Ohio with disabilities on an IEP and help them figure out what's next for them, whether it's independent living, competitive employment, or future schooling. We work through all of those things with them. And I was in that for a while. Then I had a daughter, and then I had another daughter, and COVID happened. And so I was home anyway with them when I was pregnant, and I decided that I wanted to be there for them more. And I'm always a person who really dives into a lot of different things. I don't like to just be stagnant. I have a really hard time not just bouncing around to different things. So I thought maybe I should start my own business and provide consulting to families, businesses. So during neurodiversity trainings, I work with daycares. So pretty much anything you can think of. Being a private consultant, I feel like I have a really wide range of services I can offer.
Okay, great. So it was COVID. A good thing came out of COVID because it was during COVID that you realized that you wanted to be home.
Yeah.
With your girls, so that you weren't somebody else, they weren't in daycare or with a nanny all day. And that at that point, you decided to start your own business.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I started my own business too because of I really enjoy working with people that the government systems are really great and provide a lot of great resources, but they don't have enough funding to be able to do it all. So I like to come in and provide different solutions that are kind of creative out of the box, thinking that don't necessarily fit a fee schedule that someone's, already paying for. So that's also kind of blossomed my business idea.
Okay. Wonderful. When we talked earlier, you mentioned the challenges of transitioning from a steady job to consulting.
Mhm.
Could you, what was, talk about that specific moment when you decided to pull the trigger and what advice you would give to others who are contemplating leaping from corporate or a steady job paycheck
Yeah.
to consulting?
I was really unhappy. I was going through a lot of challenges with my mental health, being at work all the time and then never really being able to turn it off, and having my family at home, and then, kids, like when you have to wake them up and put them to bed, those are like their worst times. And that's the only time I was seeing them. And I actually took like a leave of absence from work because my mental health was just suffering so much. And I was doing really well. And then it was starting to come time to go back to work. And I was like, I can't do it. Everything started flooding back. And I was like, nope, I can't do it. So we have family that was gracious enough to help support us at the time in me making the transition to not working a full-time job. I did drop down to part-time for a year to see if that would help. Ultimately, I had the same amount of work in less hours and ended up working. So it didn't make sense. But yeah, that was the big push. I felt really, really happy. I was really excited to get going and dive into it. A year in, obviously, financially, you're starting to either struggle or flourish. I'm kind of still trying to figure out, because I have such a fine-tuned list of services that I provide, that it's not just this big general list, but I'm trying to find other ways to branch out and meet families. I reached out to families recently and asked them to fill out testimonials. I'm taking any like speaking engagements that I can get and saying I'll do it for free. Like I'm doing an education night for my daughter's daycare. Tomorrow, I'm doing a speaking engagement for a human resources conference. So I just figure like I don't want to say no to anything.
Mhm. Okay. What is the biggest challenge that you've had in this first year, and how have you overcome it?
So I think I'm still overcoming it. I don't think that I fully have overcome my biggest challenge, which is getting myself out there enough to where I'm getting some referrals for some people, but I think just drumming up business is the hardest part, and getting a variety of business. A lot of my clients aren't necessarily long term. A lot of people hire me anywhere from like a month to 6 months. Um, and then, I've got so keeping that constant stream of clientele coming in is probably the biggest challenge. And I just haven't been around long enough to like, be this go-to name yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay. And speaking of being a go-to name, what
Hmm.
strategies are you using to position yourself as the go-to expert in your area?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm not saying no to anything. So whether it's free or whatever, I'm just trying to get my name out there, getting people to know me, getting in front of people. Um, I think honestly, so my first year, it was up in February. So I celebrated my year one in February.
Yay.
And
Congratulations.
I when I jumped in, when I got all the paperwork from the government, like, yes, Ingenuity Unlimited is an LLC, you're good to go. I was like, okay, in previous roles, I had been involved with trying to help people get jobs. So I was involved with a lot of chambers of commerce. So I was like, great, I'm going to get involved with a bunch of chambers of commerce. Um, it was a great network of people, um, but it wasn't the right way for me to get clients. It was a great way to get support. Unfortunately, that support isn't free. So when you're
Mhm.
struggling financially, you can't, so it just, I think they're I love chambers of commerce, but it just wasn't the best way for me to actually bring in clientele. Um, but I think um it was a good way to start getting my name just in the business community so that when I do start to join back in again, I'll have some people to talk to. I think I'm doing a lot in the community as far as like just giving advice to people and saying, if you want more intense services, I honestly think that because I've always worked for a nonprofit, I've never done anything like this before. I think I'm really bad at selling services that that cost money. So I
Mhm.
think I need to get better about that instead of like, I just want to give them my time. And I'm like, I'm not gonna ever survive like that. It's not gonna work.
Right. That, you're not alone. That is, even for people who've worked for corporations, when they go out on their own, it's that asking for the order or making an offer and standing by your pricing is probably one of the hardest things we have to learn to do when we're
Yes.
self-employed consultants. Now tell me, you're trying a bunch of different things and
Yeah.
you're not saying no to any.
Probably too many things.
Well, but that's okay at this point because you're experimenting.
Hmm.
So far, what have you found has worked for you?
Referrals has been great. I haven't been able to tap into the business community yet. I'm really hoping that getting in front of a bunch of HR professionals tomorrow, and talking about trainings and talking about thinking outside the box and accommodations and all of these things that tend to be these like HR headaches and saying like, with me by your side, it can be possible, it can be easy, it doesn't have to be this like crazy, back and forth. I'm really hoping to get into the business world that way of doing those trainings. But otherwise it's really word of mouth, I've realized is the best thing for me. I've had a few clients who then tell other people who then tell other people. There's also resource fairs in our area, and so I've signed up for those and had a table at those events. And I think the biggest thing is like I spent way too much money advertising on Facebook and stuff in my first year. And I'm like, why am I still doing this? Like, no, I have gotten zero clients from this. Zero. This isn't working. So I've kind of stepped away from that. Like I need to like get in front of people, physically be with people. Like that's at least in my service arena, like that's how I'm going to get people to trust me and trust me with their kids and their family. I need to physically be with them.
Right. Well, those are good lessons to learn, you
Yeah.
know, that is whatever marketing strategies you do, getting in front of them, and it may not need to be face to face, it could be virtually,
Right.
but but
Yes.
the key thing is to get in front of them. That's an important lesson that you've learned so far.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had another question that just fleeted my mind. Oh well.
That happens to me all the time.
So currently, it strikes me that you are working with families
Hmm.
and you're also wanting to kind of break into the business market through HR. Those are two
Yes.
completely different target markets.
Yeah.
Which one do you really makes you the most excited?
I have the most comfortability with families because that's what I've done. I'm most excited about the business world. I think I can most support my family from big like projects and things within the business world. And I think it's a more global scale that way.
So are currently working with families, is that sort of the way you're sort of getting money coming in while you're breaking into the corporate
Yeah.
market?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. And it takes different marketing strategies.
Yes, very, very different.
Yes. So when we talked earlier, you indicated that December and January, at least in the first year, were slow
Yep.
months. So next year, when you're in year two, knowing that those were slow the first year, what strategies are you developing to manage those seasonal fluctuations?
Yeah, I think, when I get to a point where I'm bringing in enough that I can, save to cover those times, that would be one thing. But I think I also have to look into what other things are going on at that time. Are there paid speaking engagements? Like what are things, what's going on? Because I know that families are at a low point. Um, so what else is going on? I need to do research and I don't have that answer yet. But I need to do research and see. It's really been a very interesting experience, and this is honestly how I anticipated it be going, because I like being going in so many different directions. Um, I'm starting to fall into place as the year went on and everything, figuring out what is actually a needed service versus where my heart is. What
Mhm.
is going to pay me versus where my heart is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important, we typically get into consulting because we do have a passion
Yeah.
about helping people solve their problems. But there also is the piece of you have to have an intersection between that and the people that are going to be willing to pay you.
Right.
And when we talked earlier, you mentioned that one of the challenges you have working with families is that many services are traditionally funded by government or
Hmm.
insurance, and you're
Yep.
looking at private pay kinds of
Yes.
things. So what objections have you gotten and how have you overcome those?
I think for some families, what can you provide that isn't already funded? And one of the things is I can start right now, whereas there's a long process for applying for services, actually being um eligible for services, then getting services, and then the services actually, being approved for services and then service actually starting. Whereas like I can start right now. I can help you until those services kick in, so there's no lead time, and then I can help you transition to those services. I can go to the meetings and all of that. The other thing is, I work in conjunction with those services too, instead of like fighting against them or it's me or them. Um, Sometimes there's behavior services that come into the home or other services, but there's very limited amounts of time per month, and it might be once a month. So I can come to that service and then help bridge until the next service. And then I do a lot of advocating and working with IEPs and all of that, and uh, some of the free services. Um, I work with the district, and sometimes when you pay for an advocate, it's very contentious. But me being on the other side, having been in school administration and a teacher, I see the benefit of really working in collaboration. I think that's my biggest business model is collaboration.
Okay. And speaking of collaboration, you mentioned it's a core value for you.
Yes.
How are you building those collaborative relationships that to help benefit your business?
Yeah. Um, People reach out to me on Instagram or come up to me in different settings like resource fairs. And a lot of people are very open and wanting collaboration. So whether it's me or the other person saying like, hey, we should host a training together, we should, would you be willing to refer to me if I'm willing to refer to you? There's a therapy group who they don't have someone with my expertise on staff. And obviously, I'm not looking to be hired by them directly. So we're collaborating to create this summer program, and it's us together creating it and working in unison.
Good. Okay. I'm going to challenge you a little bit.
Yep.
You have two very different targets.
Yep.
The one that is probably more lucrative with longer term relationships is the business market.
Yep.
The one that you really have developed the most and is sort of getting you the short term money is working with
Mm-hmm.
families and school districts and that area. If I were to say to you,
Mm-hmm.
you're making a mistake focusing in two different directions, and you need to narrow it down and pick
Yep.
one, which is
Yep.
a common issue for
Yeah.
consultants.
Yeah.
What would your response be? What comes up for you when I
I
ask you?
agree. I absolutely agree. And that I need, um, I don't want it to be the family side of things. Um, I want to try something new and go. I want to be in the business world. I'm comfortable with the family world. I know how to tap into that. I know how to get people through that. I have no idea how to get businesses, especially, in the time we're in to get me on board with things like that. I've looked at lawyers who get involved with disputes about, like, you're not giving them their accommodation and you're in the wrong, but then there's no one, a lot of the lawyers say there's no one there to then pick up the pieces and help them get things on track. So I think I've just been more hesitant to drop some stuff and dive in to the business side, but I definitely think it needs to happen. I
Okay.
totally agree. It's
Yeah.
been, I mean, I was when I first started, I was so scattered everywhere. It was like throw a dart and like and wherever it hit, that's what I was gonna try that day.
And which saying no to very little philosophy is good at the beginning because
Yes,
your it helped you to start to define what you really wanted to work on. You've
correct.
identified a really important challenge that most of us face is what you really want to do is incredibly uncomfortable. You don't necessarily know
Yep,
how to do it. What you don't want to do is very comfortable.
yep,
So, how do you kind of manage the discomfort and getting yourself out of your comfort zone into discomfort?
right. Yeah. I'm I I think I need to, you know, I realized that the chambers of commerce, that's not what they were there for. They weren't there, they're not the right people to approach with my services. That's not really what they're looking for. And I think going through trying to go through like HR channels, I'm gonna see tomorrow. If that's, a path, pick people's brains and see, is that a good way to go about this? I think it's really going to be trial and error. But I'm hopeful that tomorrow goes well, and that through the training that I'm offering, that they can see the value in it. And not just, I mean, my big thing is that it's not just this is the right thing to do, so I'm here to make you do it, or it's a mutual benefit, and showing businesses what they're already doing that are accommodations, and then how to take it a little bit further. Talking about universal accommodation, so making it less scary, more manageable. And then when they bring someone on that they know has a disability of some kind, bringing me into the conversations to someone who knows the language, who knows all of that kind of stuff, to kind of lay everything out on the table, building a culture that people are comfortable saying this instead of there being an issue that now we have to backpedal and figure out what to do.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine that if a leader hires somebody and they're not used to working with somebody, having somebody that they do have to make those accommodations for, that there might be some mind landmines that might step into in terms of languaging or in terms even
Yeah.
the non-conscious things and how
Yeah, I talk to businesses about workplace culture and building an inclusive culture.
yeah, which is way easier said than done.
Yes, definitely.
Well, we're starting to wrap up, but I have two more questions.
Sure.
What metrics or indicators are you using to evaluate success in your business besides just financial measures?
I think what people are saying about me and my business, I think, yeah, the word of mouth, what people have to say about what I do, um, my own fulfillment of what am I doing? Am I happy? Do I feel better than I felt when I was at my worst? How is everything, how is it affecting my family and all of that? I think all of those are all metrics that I'm using for sure.
And how would you measure that your success on those metrics?
I think that um I'm able to do a lot more with my kids, which is huge win. I've taken on now more things with my kids so that the house is now not doing great. So it's like now balancing all of that. But I think overall they're much better than they were a year and a half ago, which is so important.
Yes, definitely. Um, dang it. That's the second time I've had a thought and forgotten. Oh well.
I ramble on. Don't blame
No,
yourself.
you're not rambling on. This is the what would you do differently
Mhm.
if you knew what you now know after the first year and a couple months?
I wouldn't buy into the stereotypical ways of advertising and promoting my business. I would do more boots to the ground, getting in with businesses, like the ideas that I'm having now about businesses. Um, at first, it was really important for me to make sure I was bringing in anything, income wise. And now it's like, okay, now I have to switch gears and now I have to figure out what that means. And so I think I wish I would have made a plan to transition from one to the other, but at the time I didn't know that,
Mhm.
hindsight's 2020. But yeah, I think if I was able to start earlier when I was still working, that would have been great. It just wasn't possible. But I think that would have been ideal.
So have a little bit longer runway
Yeah.
before you were out on your own. Okay.
Hmm.
Where do you see your business in 3 to 5 years?
I would love to be someone that other businesses, companies, corporations view someone as, I want to be the name in the room that they're like, let's call Julie. She'll know what to do for this. Let's bring her in. Like we've got this staff training. Julie's a great speaker. Let's bring her in. So I think that's probably my ideal world, is to make a name for myself that people trust and want to bring in to be the problem solver.
Okay. And what obstacles do you think are going to get in the way of you fulfilling this vision?
I'm not sure at this point.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll find out and I'll let you know.
And last question,
Uh-huh.
what one piece of advice do you have for other self-employed consultants?
Um, keep fighting, keep working through. If you went out on your own because you were unhappy in what you were in before, remind yourself, compare. Is this unhappy better or worse than that unhappy? Do I want to go back to this, or do I think I can pull through and come out on the other side?
Great. Love it. Good advice. And that is a wrap on today's episode with Julie Collison. Julie, thank you for being a guest on the Thriving Through podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for this enlightening conversation with Julie Collison. The key takeaway from today's episode is that building a successful consulting practice requires both courage and focus. The courage to step out of your comfort zone and the focus to narrow down your target market to where you can have the greatest impact. If you're feeling inspired by Julie's journey, here are some actions you can take right away. First, examine your current business focus. Are you spreading yourself too thin across multiple markets? Consider where your true passion and profitability intersect, and be willing to make the tough decision to narrow your focus. Second, evaluate your marketing approach. As Julie discovered, face-to-face connections and relationship building often trump digital advertising for consultants. What relationship building opportunities are you overlooking? Third, look at where you're most comfortable versus where you could be most successful. Challenge yourself to step beyond your comfort zone and into areas with greater growth potential. And finally, get help if you want to grow your business and make more money. There's nothing better or more effective than having a coach or mentor by your side. And that's where I come in. I can help you build a consulting business that nourishes both your bank account and your soul. If that's of interest, book a free exploratory consultation with me. My Calendly link is in the show notes. And finally, if you like this episode, click subscribe on your podcast platform so that you don't miss future episodes, and leave a review on your podcast app or on YouTube so other self-employed consultants can learn about the podcast. Until next time, keep thriving through.